G'day folks, and welcome to Wise Guy History's Wargame of the Year from 1999 to 2024. This is an evaluation I've just completed over the last week. I've gone through every year from 1999 to 2024 and have picked my favourite wargame for each given year. I have some honourable mentions for some years where it was really close, and in thinking about this there was a lot of back and forth. I picked a game and I thought, no, actually I like this game better, or yeah, we'll talk to that when I get to that. The last 10 years in particular, a lot of great games coming out and a lot of competition. I am prepared in advance for disagreement. Please let me know in the comments where you think I am disastrously wrong, where you think I've missed a game, haven't mentioned a game, where you think I should reevaluate something. I'm very much open to your feedback, your criticisms. Let me know where you think this needs to be addressed. And I'm going to start with 1999. I'm picking 1999 because it's a year of my favourite game, Paths of Glory. I should also point out, before I dive further, that I am trying as much as possible to pick the original year of publication. So Paths of Glory has seen many different versions, publications over the years, including the English Deluxe Edition from 2022. As much as possible, I'm focusing on the original year of publication. There are some caveats which we'll address when I get through it, but yeah, I'm looking for the original year of publication, and I'm not, for the most part, considering new editions, new publications, revised editions, deluxe editions, things like that. I'm looking at the original year that these games were published, just to keep it fair and balanced throughout. There's one kind of, you'll see when it comes up, one little kind of, not quite an exception, but an edge case for that evaluation. Okay, so 1999, Paths of Glory, Ted Racer, my favourite game of all time. Card-driven game, focused on the First World War. Pros and cons. Pros, an incredible level of tension between the players, an incredible level of tension when you're looking at your hand of cards. So you'll deal out typically 7 cards, you will look through these, you'll work through the action phases, you move your armies and your corps around the map, aiming for victory points. Cons, the biggest con for this, the reason a lot of people don't like it, 2 main reasons. One, it can lead towards some very ahistorical outcomes. I really want to emphasize that this is more a game than a simulation, but it is very heavy. With a 3.85 weight rating, there's a lot of investment of time in this game. You cannot simply sit down and play it. You really need to play it multiple times to understand, particularly the supply rules. It is very easy for a new player to find their armies out of supply, surrounded, eliminated, game over very early on. So there's a very steep learning curve for Paths of Glory. So it can be ahistorical, and it does have a very steep learning curve. The rules are one thing. Learning how to play the game and protect your supply to your units is the biggest part of that learning curve. But if you can get past that, if you don't mind approaching this as a gaming experience and not trying to recreate the First World War, it is an outstanding game, wonderful experience every time I play it. I don't think I've ever had a bad game of Paths of Glory. It's always fun. Okay, moving on to the year 2000. And my game of the year, this was actually, there wasn't a lot from the year 2000. And certainly of the number of publications that I could retrieve, there were very few that I had actually played. So Ukraine 43 takes top spot almost by default because there wasn't much else to compete with in this year. So one of the early Mark Simonich Zoc Bond designs, still very much playable, has seen multiple editions over the years. Here are the different versions, including the GMT second edition from 2015, which I can't remember what the updates were. But look, a Hex Encounter, I-Go-You-Go system, Zoc Bond. Spoiler alert, it's not the first game in this series. It's not the first Simonich design to feature on this list. Designed by Tony Curtis, Mark Simonich, published by GMT Games in the year 2000. 3.56 weight rating is, I think, pretty high compared to Paths of Glory, which had a similar rating. But I'd put it a bit lower, but moderate to high complexity for Ukraine 43. Yeah, a great game for the year 2000. Heading into the year 2001 and Wilderness War. Volko Ruhnke's Wilderness War, one of Volko's earlier designs, another card-driven game, very similar to Paths of Glory and the like. It's been a long time since I played this, but again, very good experiences, a lot of tension. There are the usual criticisms with historical, being able to recreate history because it's a card-driven game. It is a game, it does branch off from history. You can get ahistorical outcomes, but a great system of raid is built into this, the paths through North America. And yeah, another GMT game. What else more can I say about that? Probably one of the still moderate to high complexity for a card-driven game, but probably easier to learn than Paths of Glory, Pursuit of Glory, and the like. But worth checking out. Focusing on the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War in North America in the 1750s, late 1750s. Yeah, worth checking out from the year 2001. For the year 2002, I had two main contenders, and I have opted for World War II Barbarossa to Berlin as my favourite game of the year. Very similar to Paths of Glory, but more at a tighter range of options available. Whereas Paths of Glory, First World War, has the Western Front, the Eastern Front, North Africa, Italy, the Balkans, Barbarossa to Berlin focuses predominantly on the Eastern Front. There is activity elsewhere, of course, but the vast bulk of your attention is focused on that Eastern Front, and it's probably more predictable in its direction than Paths of Glory. Paths of Glory can branch off in so many different ways. Barbarossa to Berlin has that drive on Moscow, that drive east, the attempt by the Axis forces to kick Russia out of the war, and if they don't, they're in for a long and difficult struggle. And you know that's kind of the narrative arc that this game will follow. Still very enjoyable. I don't rate it nearly as highly as I do Paths of Glory. You can see my rating here is 7, whereas I think Paths of Glory is a 10 for me, so it's a few points below. That's probably an old rating, I think it's fair to say. I can't remember the last when I rated that, but it's probably I've played it quite recently, and still a lot of fun, but not quite as replayable and as remarkable and mind-blowing as the deep dive into Paths of Glory is. You see that card-driven tension, still have to watch your supply, so similar level of complexity as Paths of Glory, very similar weight rating, but not quite as long-term satisfying, replayable, not quite as remarkable as Paths of Glory is. Now, the other game I had for this year is Hammer of the Scots, Columbia Games block game. I think it's my personal favourite Columbia Games block game, and it was published also in 2002. So a close second place for Hammer of the Scots. For 2003, no contest really. Actually, there was a contest. Ardennes 44, the Battle of the Bulge, the second Mark Simonich title on this list. GMT Games, probably my top 5, in my top 5 of games of all time. And again, it has seen many versions published over the years. The third edition from as recently as 2019. I recently did a playthrough of this on the channel, which you can check out. There are actually a few playthroughs of this on the channel now. But yeah, just a remarkable game that I love the decision processes you're making when you're playing this game. You are looking and studying these road networks and looking for paths. It's an amazing little puzzle. It's an amazing big puzzle, like a logic puzzle for gamers, trying to count up your road movement, allowances, and both players are doing this. The Americans are mainly trying to establish roadblocks and slow down the Germans. The Germans are trying to look for a path through. Really fascinating decisions in Ardennes 44. If you're a wargamer and you like complex decisions and having options available to you, and having, you pick one unit, they've got 10 different options available, you have to weigh up the pros and cons of these different paths, then yeah, check out Ardennes 44. Now, the very close runner-up was Bonaparte at Marengo, also published in 2003, and again, one of my favourite games of all time. So 2003 was a tough year for these two coming out at the same time. Bonaparte at Marengo by Simmons is an outstandingly innovative game design, but pipped at the post by Ardennes 44. There it is. It looks amazing. It was recently republished, Triumph Amarengo, but I have the original version. It's almost chess-like in its abstract nature, but it feels like a war game with sort of chess-like mechanisms involved in terms of the kind of move, counter move, build-up of play. So moving on to 2004, there were two contenders. And again, this is the first year, I believe, I may be wrong here. This is the first year that War of the Ring was published. I'm pretty sure the first edition came out in 2004. So this is the second edition, which I have, but the first edition, which I previously owned, was published in 2004. And it is a wonderfully narrative-rich war game. In the kind of, this is the miniatures on a map type of war game, with sort of card facilitated, not card driven, but card facilitated. You've got event cards and character cards and combat cards you can play. You've got this war taking place through Middle Earth. At the same time, you've got the Fellowship trying to slowly weave their way in advance. It's almost two simultaneous things happening at the same time. Your big war, the battle for strongholds and Helm's Deep, Minas Tirith and the like. And at the same time that all that is going on and all these armies are moving around, the Fellowship is trying to weave their way through to Mordor and avoid becoming corrupted by the ring. So there's this tension between those two, and both players are trying to balance that tension, wage this war whilst also manage the ring and corruption and all the other external factors that influence that. So yes, I had War of the Ring as number one. My runner-up was probably a distant second, was Sword of Rome, GMT game, a 5-player card-driven game. It's rare to get a good, it's oriented to 5 players. It just kind of fell flat with our group. It didn't feel balanced. I was, from memory, the Etruscans and just was smashed on all sides. And it's great to have that 5-player card-driven game experience, but very difficult to reconcile the balance factors in that. Okay, so 2005, and again, we get to another very tense year, and this is where I expect some disagreement. My favourite game this year is Triumph of Chaos. And again, this is the first edition, the year the first edition was published. The second edition was published in 2019. Now, it's quite a different edition. I was tempted to say it's so distinct that it should deserve its own spot. But, look, it's the same fundamental system and rules. So I've said, okay, Triumph of Chaos, first edition 2005. Even the first edition was wonderful. It is incredibly complex. Again, the rules are relatively straightforward, but bringing all this together is a challenge. Card-driven game takes the core system of Paths of Glory and For the People and Hannibal Rome versus Carthage and the like, and uplifts it with a whole new system of politics. And that political system, which you kind of see in the background cover image here. Let me bring up this image so you can get detail. This is the political map. You influence these nations through a whole political system in the sequence of play, where you're playing cards to try and sway Lithuania over to your side, or sway the Ukraine over to your side, or even many times just stopping your opponent from gaining these allies. And I love that. I love that you are playing politics with these nations whilst also waging this war. This is what the original first edition map looked like. The second edition map looks even better. I'm trying to get a detailed view of what this looks like. Here we go. Looks beautiful. The city layout, the terrain, it really is evocative, and the armies and core that you use is really evocative of this period. But yeah, again, that warning that it is a very heavy game. And does require that heavy investment of time, not just to learn the system, but to learn the implications of all these rules. Focus, I should say, on the Russian Civil War. Triumph of Chaos, focusing on the Russian Civil War, Reds versus Whites, and all these potential allies that they can bring into the fight. Now, there were several close contenders. So Triumph of Chaos was my favourite. But of course, it's a year that Empire of the Sun was first published, and I know a lot of people are going to say, well, how can I overlook this? And it was really tough. I prefer to play Triumph of Chaos. When I have my head in the space and I can learn Triumph of Chaos, I prefer to play Triumph of Chaos. Empire of the Sun's brilliant, not taking anything away from that, but just comparing the two, my personal favourite was Triumph of Chaos. It was also the year that Silent War was published, a wonderful solitaire game, and this was recently republished in the second edition as well. So Silent War by Brian Miller, recently republished by Compass Games, which I have with me. I bought the first edition, I've now got the second edition. An incredibly deep and long solo experience. If you have the time and space to keep a game set up for months and play through it, and then this is a really great study of the US Navy's submarine war during the Second World War. Okay, so moving on to 2006, and Here I Stand. Here I Stand used to be one of my favourite games. You can see it's kind of dropped in ratings recently. In recent years, I've only been playing, because it's such a huge game, it takes 7, 8, 9 hours. You need a full day to play with 6 people. You really need to manage the diplomacy. And we started playing the tournament scenario, and that's kind of tainted my experience because I don't think the tournament scenario is all that balanced or fun, particularly because I often play as the papacy. So this is focused on the wars of the Reformation. Up to 6 players. It plays very well as a 2, 3, in particular 2 and 3 play game. Reasonably well as a 4 and 5 play game. I would say the best player counts are 6. If not 6, then 3. And then 2, 4 or 5. But yeah, focus on the wars of Reformation. You've got your card-driven aspect, very asynchronous player powers. So the Habsburgs, the yellow, they control most of large parts of Europe at the start of the game, and they are trying to, in effect, take over a large part of Europe. The papacy, who I often play because they're one of the most challenging powers, they have to play the religious war. They are engaging in debates against the Protestants, and the Protestants are doing the same thing. They're engaging in debates against the papacy. They're trying to spread their religious influence throughout Europe. Then you've got the Ottomans in green off in the east, and they're engaging in piracy. They're trying to undermine the Ottomans. They're allying with the French to counter this Habsburg threat. And you've got the British, who are also Protestant, and they're waging a bit of a war, trying to establish a foothold on mainland Europe through military means, whilst also kind of converting spaces to Protestantism. So card-driven, but yeah, very different player power experiences. If you play the papacy, you are not doing a great deal. If you play the Habsburgs, they get a far greater hand of cards, which means that they can do a lot more. Now, I did have some close seconds. Command & Colors Ancients came out this year, and it was one of my gateways to gaming. So a recognition that it came out this year. Also, A Victory Loss by MMP was a wonderful publication in this year. So no, close second and third there. But yeah, Here I Stand holds prime place for 2006. For 2007, Napoleon's Triumph. Again, a Simmons design. It took the Bonaparte Marengo system and it upscaled it to Austerlitz. And it's fundamentally the same system, but through a couple of, I really can't recall the details, but through some subtle changes in the rules, it created a wholly better game. Bonaparte Marengo is great. I can't remember what my rating for this is, but for Napoleon's Triumph, 9.5, and it looks amazing. I think it's just the battle itself and the size, scale, grandeur of that battle. It's broader. So Bonaparte Marengo tends to focus on particular locations. It tends to be a smaller scale operation, whereas Napoleon's Triumph stretches across the battlefield of Austerlitz. And I think it's that scale for maneuver and combat that makes Napoleon's Triumph better than Bonaparte and Marengo. As much as I love them both, I think this is, again, by virtue of the battle itself, a better design. Incidentally, Guns of Gettysburg came out later, the third sort of in this series. I don't rate as highly because it really kind of broke, again, because of the battle. I don't think the system really just worked that well in a Gettysburg setting. And another honourable mention for Tide of Iron, which came out in 2007 as well. Which my son absolutely loves, which was quite innovative at the time. I remember when this first came out, I didn't pick it up immediately, but Tide of Iron was seen as very innovative for 2007 with what you could do with your units. Okay, 2008. This was very tough. This was a year where I've got 5 shortlisted candidates for Game of the Year. Now, of course, I've settled on the Devil's Cauldron, which you can see here. GTS, Adam Starkweather, MMP. I did not pick this up at the time, but everyone was talking about it, and this wonderful system that it sort of introduced to gamers. So yeah, it gets my Game of the Year. Grand Tactical System, huge, covering battles for Arnhem and Nijmegen, paired with, of course, Where Eagles Dare, which is the Eindhoven 30 core drive up Hell's Highway. You can combine them two to create a massive scenario, which I've never done. I tried to do it once and failed very quickly. But yeah, just the fact that this introduced a system that by itself, wonderful game, and yeah, came out this year. My runners-up were important, and as I said, this was a tough decision. I nearly picked, in fact, I initially picked Two de Mayo. It's an amazing game. It's such a simple 2-player kind of abstract game. The reason it's probably not rated highly is it's more of an abstract game than a war game. But if you can get your hands on this, it is well worth it. It should be inexpensive, easy to learn. I've played it with my kids, but it creates really great tense situations, and again, you're making some really interesting decisions, blind decisions. So it's got this sort of, both players write their orders down on a sheet of paper and reveal them at the same time. And your forces, not really armies, your forces, because the Spanish have their militia and civilians, are kind of moving around Madrid, while the French are moving their big, powerful, actual forces, soldiers around. So yeah, preparation phase, orders phase, movement phase, and then resolution of combat where forces come together. But what can I say? It looks great. This is what it looks like on the table. Very small footprint. That's the size of an A4 piece of paper, if not a little less. Cubes, and this is the hand of cards that you use to facilitate sort of various things throughout the game. So that was a close runner-up. Pursuit of Glory also came out this year. This almost got my number 1. I do rate this very highly. Successor to Paths of Glory, but focus on the Near East. I guess I love it. I love playing Pursuit of Glory. It's very difficult. It's even heavier than Paths of Glory. There are a lot of additional rules regarding the desert and where you can build trenches, there's special rules for the Balkans. It adds a layer of complexity. I've played this many times, and it always feels like I don't think the Ottoman forces have ever won a game of Pursuit of Glory. So it's a big learning curve for the Ottoman player in particular. I haven't played it near as much as I have Pursuit of Glory. But yeah, it's got that card-driven aspect, the tension. I don't think the added layer of complexity really adds to the game experience. I think it actually takes away from it, because there's so much to forget and so much you have to do and keep in mind and all this kind of thing. So yeah, it was a bit of a runner-up. This is also the year, of course, that Fields of Fire came out. And look, I personally am not a huge fan of Fields of Fire. I hate the swings of luck. So it's a solitaire game, a one-player game. Look, great solitaire system, tells a great story, But as with so many of these types of systems, I played through a couple of campaigns, a couple of scenarios, which you can see on the channel, but I experienced these massive swings of luck. I could be doing so well, and then suddenly the enemy forces ambush me and undoes all this effort, and I lose. And I just found that hard to swallow. It's a heavy game. It's a big, heavy game. Weight 4.24, not helped by pretty poor rule books that came out in the earlier editions. I bought this game when it first came out, tried to learn it, failed it, sold it, picked it up just a couple of years ago. Look, this is a game that really relies on the many great YouTube playthroughs. So I think Tony, Blue Tweezers, Tony's Board Gaming Life, Blue Tweezers, I think Rough Swordsman have done some playthroughs of this, and I watched through pretty much all of those videos, watched through everything and anything, and they really helped me to come to grips with these rules. Without those YouTube video playthroughs, the rulebook itself would be really difficult. So it's one of those games that really has relied on the community to help people learn it. And another game that came out this year, which I don't have a video for, is Maneuver. Another GMT publication, 8 little regiments and 8 versus 8 little regiments on a square grid, but it's worth an honourable mention as well because that's another great game from 2008. As we move to 2009, there was no competition for me. It was D-Day at Omaha Beach. John Butterfield, solo design published by Decision Games. It has seen a couple of versions over the years. I still have the original first printing from 2009, so this is the version that I have, which I have no problem with, plays fine. It's been described as one of the ugliest games, but what this ugly map actually what it conveys is a wealth of information for you to study as you advance your units off the beach. All these little hexagonal coloured boxes are German potential positions where German units may be placed, Wiedersehen nests, defensive positions, and emanating from these areas are their fields of fire. So if you look at these green nests here, this is where the Germans will be located, and they'll have intense, sporadic, and I can't remember what the other one is, fire. And the more dense those circles, the more likely your units are to get hit. So the closer your infantry companies get to these nests, the more likely they are to experience hits. So it's really great study, wonderful solitaire game. It's this kind of solitaire game that, yes, there is some random elements here, a lot of random elements, but it always feels like your decisions are critical, that you are making some very important sort of tactical and operational plans and decisions to respond to those random factors and shape your fortunes as you advance. So you feel like you're in control of what's going on. So yeah, that was my game for 2009. Moving into 2010, my game of the year was Normandy 44. Again, it's probably the third Simonich title to feature on this list. Look, this is a tough one in the sense that Normandy 44 it's a grinding hex encounter. Same system, I go, you go, Zoc Bond, but a lot of bocage. And yeah, you are grinding through the Normandy campaign throughout most of June through to the end of June. So you're looking at that first month on a day-to-day basis. It is certainly not the high movement that you see in some of the other titles. You are moving 1 or 2 hexes at a time, slowly pushing the Germans back through that bocage. So it is far slower grind than the other Simonich titles. And my runner-up for this year was Labyrinth, The War on Terror, another card-driven game. Uses the system closer to Twilight Struggle than Paths of Glory. So very similar to Twilight Struggle, soloable as well, and yeah, a fascinating game. For 2011, I had Sekigahara. Again, another innovative design by Matt Culkins, a block game that is card facilitated. It looks beautiful. So normally your blocks wouldn't all be facing the same way. Normally they would look something like this. So this is what you'd see. you would see your armies, you would see your hand of cards, but you would not know what your opponent has, both either at the location or in their hand. Your idea is to bring your forces, bring your clans together into battle and align their forces with your order cards so that you can actually bring them into the fight. These are the cards, okay? So you can see the clans on here. You want to combine those two elements. Again, this is another broader view of what you'll see. You'll see your armies with your hand of cards. So you'll know where your armies are, but you may not have the cards to match. So you might bluff with this large army here, but not actually have the cards matching to be able to bring them to battle and get them to attack. So it's got that tension of bluffing, maybe bringing a large army up and hoping your opponent doesn't attack, but they actually withdraw, thinking that you can attack. And it uses this system to create some really cool mind games. That's not part of the game. So yeah, it's a beautiful looking game. And takes out my game of the year for 2011. So for 2012, a game that may surprise people, it's in magnificent style. Now I have the original Victory Point game first polybag edition. It comes in a little plastic bag, which is kind of behind me on the shelf over here. And I have loved this game for many. I loved it when I got it in 2012. This was shipped by VPG in the USA. It arrived in Australia in about 5 working days. I don't know how they did it, but I ordered and it was here the next week. And I love this game and I have played it so many times. It is so easy to get to the table. My little polybag version, this is the newer version. My version, let me try and find it, looks great. It's hard to tell. Here we go. This is what mine looks like. Lay out the map, put your counters down, roll the die, get going. Really, it's so easy to set up and get going. And again, it's a push your luck style of game, focusing on Pickett's charge at Gettysburg. You are gradually kind of moving your forces up this grid, this map, trying to get them into the Union trenches. So here you can see them here. Advancing, you try to get them to advance as much as possible before they become, I think it's disordered. And this is their strength. These are their strength counters along the bottom, showing how many sort of representative strength of your. So these are brigades. Yeah, your brigades. You've got Pickett's division and then your brigades moving up. But it's that push your luck and the tension associated with that. Many random factors, but again, much like D-Day at Omaha Beach, you feel that you're in control. A game of In Magnificent Style only goes for about an hour. You play through the whole game in an hour. At the end, you feel really satisfied. Win or lose, that you've had a good chance. You've tried your luck, and yeah, it's really interesting. Some short-term decisions. Do I keep pushing or do I hold and recover? That's pretty much the decision you're making. A lot of other little things, like you can set up, you can place ground cover and fire and all this kind of stuff. But look, a really wonderful experience. There were quite a few runners-up for this year. I had Fading Glory. I think that's GMT. It's a series of Napoleonic 20 titles, so light counter-density Napoleonic battles. Really fun. I played through all the battles and look, very light, easy to get into, great experience. Thunderbolt Apache Leader by DVG was a wonderful solo experience. You really become connected to the people, your pilots and crew and the like. And 1989 Dawn of Freedom, which was again another successor to Twilight Struggle. By Ted Torgerson, and it incorporated a battle mechanism as made famous by Hannibal Rome versus Carthage. We have this battle card combat as part of the Twilight Struggle system. So yeah, really cool little addition to that. For 2013, my game of the year, again, this is close, I picked The Dark Valley by Ted Racer. I haven't played this. I dabbled with it. I haven't played it enough, but I know the system and I know enough of this to to be frank, there wasn't a lot of competition this year. It was either between this or my runner-up was A Distant Plane, the coin system. And I figured that Dark Valley deserved Game of the Year because, again, of the impact it has had. I don't have much to say about this because I haven't played it enough. As I said, I dabbled early with the opening turns and had to pack it up. But yeah, it's moderate complexity. I would not put that too high. Fairly easy to learn, but it is big. So yeah, there's a lot going on across that eastern front. And A Distant Plane, the runner-up, is part of the Coin series, focusing on the war of Afghanistan. For 2014, again, another very close year. I settled on Fire in the Lake, which is probably one of my favourite Coin titles. Every time I've played this, it's been very tense, very close, very interesting. So it took out Game of the Year for me 2014. The Coin series, for those who don't know, is a card facilitated system. It uses the same system where you have sort of your regular troops and irregulars. The regular troops tend to be stronger combat troops. The irregulars tend to be engaged in sort of sabotage, subterfuge, things like that. And they are either hidden or revealed. You score victory points through various things, having resources, control of objectives. Every game is a little bit different. Yeah, and the runner-up for this year was Battle of the Five Armies. Again, one of my favourite games, very highly rated. It's a tough one. This is so close. Battle of the Five Armies, Fire in the Lake. This uses sort of the combat system from War of the Ring, but it takes away the Fellowship of the Ring mechanic. So you still have heroes and characters in this title, but they're only used pretty much for combat. So you're just focusing on the combat aspects of that War of the Ring game. Brilliant, fascinating game. I really enjoy it. Very close, as I said, very close, very, very close runner-up to Fire in the Lake. Okay, for 2015, my game of the year was The Greatest Day. I've played this game a heck of a lot. I've never played the full campaign, but there are so many scenarios. I don't know if it's summarized here. There are so many scenarios in this game, and each scenario is very much replayable. There is so much depth to The Greatest Day that, yeah, you could play this for hours, 6,000 minutes playing time. Again, I've played this for hours and hours, dozens and dozens of hours, and never once set up or played the full campaign. And if I were to play that, it'd triple, quadruple my playtime. It is, I should say, sorry, it's the Grand Tactical Series, focusing on Sword, Juno, and Gold beaches, June 1944, and the Airborne, the 6th Airborne landing as well, Pegasus Bridge, Caen River Canal, Caen Canal and the Orne River. You've got special invasion rules. So along this map image here, you can see, no, you can't see there. Yeah, actually, I think these are the invasion beaches off in the distance. Here's an invasion beach. They've got a special invasion sequence of play and an invasion beach. Here's what it looks like. So these are the beach overlays. Fascinating little mini game within the GTS rules. And there were some very close competitors, runners-up this year. The US Civil War by GMT sort of evolved from VG Civil War, which I never played, but I loved the US Civil War. When I first played the US Civil War, I finished it and set it up straight again. I think I played it 2 or 3 times in a row. It's grand, the US Civil War on a sort of grand strategic scale. Another runner-up was Enemy Action Ardennes, and I love Enemy Action Ardennes. John Butterfield design, Compass Games. Yep, the Ardennes Offensive, 3 games in 1, US solo, German solo, and PvP. Haven't played the PvP, but I think the German solo is my favourite, and it is outstanding. But it is a heavy game. and a big learning curve. And it's hard to get back into it because of that big learning curve. Every time you return to it, it's a big challenge once again. And Mark Herman's Churchill came out this year as well by GMT Games. 3-player semi-co-op game, Churchill, Stalin and Roosevelt working together to fight the Second World War on a very grand strategic scale, but your focus is on negotiations at these conferences, and you're trying to it uses a series, a sort of system of play or mechanics that you may be familiar with from Pericles, which has now sort of evolved into a couple of other titles. I can't remember what it's called, the Great Statesman series or Grand Statesman series. But yes, worth checking out Churchill. It's a dedicated 3-play game, so it's rare to find. There aren't many 3-play games, so Churchill is one of those, really focused on 3 players. Has a good solo system as well. At least it's a good solo system for learning to play the game. And yeah, also came out in 2015. For 2016, look, one of my favourite games as well, No Competition, The Last Blitzkrieg, BCS. Brilliant. It uses the BCS system, DNSig design, published by MMP. And look, I want to get back into this straight away. I want to play this now. I've been thinking about getting back into this BCS. It's a heavy system, and let's see what the rating was. A heavy system, 3.73, that once you learn it, just flows and plays so smoothly, and there's back and forth, there's constant player interaction, everyone's always engaged, not a heavy rules overhead. So yes, 3.73, hard to learn. Initial kind of barrier is those rules, but then the learning curve is quite gentle. You feel like you can play it. There are some elements that are hard and tricky, but yeah, it really feels like you can get going with it quite quickly, and then you're in this monster game. I rate it 10 out of 10. I think it's amazing and one of my favourite games of all time. But there were some other competitors. Liberty or Death, another coin game, and Falling Sky also came out this year. 2 wonderful coin games. Liberty or Death is focusing on the American Revolutionary War, and Falling Sky focuses on Caesar's campaign in Gaul. And they are another 2 of my favourite other coin games. So yeah, it was fierce competition for 2016. For 2017, my game of the year was Colonial Twilight. Again, another close game. Colonial Twilight is a 2-player coin game, and I didn't think this would work, and it just does. So much so that Colonial Twilight is one of my favourite coin games. I keep saying this is one of my favourite coin games, but I would probably put Colonial Twilight at the top of my coin pile, because I don't know if I was just so vastly surpassed my expectations that a 2-player coin game could work, or that it works so well. Relatively easy coin game, comparing them all against each other, but I think the weight rating should be a lot lower than that. It's fairly easy to learn, certainly as far as coin games go. The fact that it's 2-player as well makes it easier to get to the table. So yeah, Colonial Twilight takes out my number 1. But there are more runners-up. Holland 44 came out this year. One of my least favourite of the Zokbon series, but still a great game. Pericles, which I just mentioned. So Pericles came out after Churchill. I thought it came first, but let me double check that actually. Pericles, yeah, it came out 2017. No, I was right. So this is the game I was talking about. So runner-up there, another Mark Herman design, and Pendragon. Pendragon is probably the most complex of the coin series. We have played it a lot. It's probably our most played in the coin series because we're fascinated by the historical situation. This is Roman Britain, the collapse of Roman Britain. But we don't enjoy it as much because of the combat mechanism, the quite detailed and complex combat mechanism in Pendragon. So great game, great experience, but don't like the combat, the deterministic but quite long and detailed combat system. Okay, moving into 2018, and this is where I said earlier that I've tried to go with first editions. So this re-implements Hannibal Rome versus Carthage. Hannibal Rome versus Carthage, brilliant game, first published in 1996, so outside the scope of this list, but this is effectively, it's more than just a new edition. It includes an entirely separate game, Hannibal and Hamilcar. So there's 2 games in one within this. You can see includes new scenarios and variants. Where is it? Hamilcar is a companion game sharing components and using similar mechanics. So yes, the fact that you're getting 2 games in the one box, I believe, was there a new version coming out this year? I'm pretty sure there was. I think it may be on Kickstarter soon by Phalanx Games. Card driven. I love this game. It's fascinating. It always... Pros and cons. It's got that card driven tension. It's easier than Paths of Glory. I don't know why the weight rating is so high, but it's easier to learn than Paths of Glory. The big downside to this is it uses a common deck, and that has often, in a very close game against 2 even players, who gets the right card at the right time and who doesn't, particularly in the last turn, that hand of cards you get in the last turn can determine the game, and that can be frustrating. That can be really frustrating when you've played such a good game, such a tight game, and then your opponent gets a great hand of cards and you don't, and they win because of that rather than anything else. But yeah, it's a wonderful game experience. Victory or defeat aside, Hannibal versus Hamilcar, particularly the Hannibal Rome versus Carthage element of that is amazing. Another fascinating game, contentious game that came out this year is Cataclysm, also by GMT. Second World War on a grand strategic political scale. Very, very hefty learning curve. Hard to get into. Big time investment required. And I had to watch through hours and hours of videos, read the rules, and then watch through hours of YouTube videos to understand how to play Cataclysm. I know a lot of people don't like it for that reason. The fact that it is kind of an abstract, grand strategic game with a huge learning curve. And it's hard to get, I think it's a 3-player game, hard to get 3 people to the table to invest that time to play the game. But yeah, honourable mention for that for this year. Moving into 2019, my game of the year is Stalingrad 42. I'm playing it right now. Another Symmetry Designs. It's the 4th one on this list, and probably my second favourite behind Ardennes 44. I'm playing it right now. It's open at Vassal at the moment. It's very different to Ardennes 44. There are very few terrain features. You've got the major rivers as sort of boundaries or barriers to your advance, but gameplay in Stalingrad, what defines Stalingrad 42 is your management of forces, in particular your management of stacks and Zoc bonds. As part of the Zoc bond series, your Zoc bonds in Stalingrad 42 are paramount in your considerations. You're not looking at roads or movement points or highway networks. You're looking at how can I create a defensive line using my units, using Zoc bonds and using their defensive strength. All the Allied forces are thinking, the Axis forces are thinking, how can I break those Zoc bonds? How can I break those defensive stacks? Where can I concentrate my forces? So all your thinking is around force, strength, attack factors or defense factors, and Zoc bonds, and all breaking those Zoc bonds. That's my review of Stalingrad 42 in a nutshell compared to other 7-inch titles. So yeah, it took out number 1 for me. As I mentioned earlier, Triumph of Chaos, the Deluxe Edition, came out this year. Honourable mention. If you think it deserves a separate entry, here is where it would go. Another great game is Nevsky that came out this year. Now, a lot of people, people love Nevsky or hate it. I love so many things about it. The aesthetics, the planning of your forces, the micromanagement of your little units within those forces. A lot of people don't like the movement rules, and that was a struggle to initially get our head around. I acknowledge that, but if you can, it's worth repeated plays. If you can get your head around the movement rules, there's a really fascinating system there, which is now, of course, part of a broader levy and campaign series by Volko. Okay, moving to 2020. And again, this year, wow. I've settled on Imperial Struggle as my favourite game for the year. Again, it's because it's so vastly surpassed. I bought this in 2020. I didn't play it until, I think, 2022, maybe even 2023. COVID had something to do with that. but partly also because I'm not a fan of Twilight Struggle, I thought this would just use the same system. It is so so yes, while it draws on elements of Twilight Struggle, it shouldn't really be put in the same basket because it is not like Twilight Struggle 1989 and the like. I would struggle to even put this in the same category as other card-driven games because there is so much more to what you're doing on this amazing world map. I love the economic side of things. I love the military side of things. I love the planning side of things. It creates really quite a distinct gaming experience. And it doesn't matter. If you don't like Twilight Struggle, there is potential for you to love Imperial Struggle because they are so different. They may borrow some elements, the same designers, the same some key phrases and mechanics, but they really are distinctly different gaming experiences. So for me, this was Game of the Year. Very, very closely followed by Caesar, Rome versus Gaul. I almost picked this. I rate them both 9s. I just think if I had them both and I could only keep one, I would probably keep Imperial Struggle. So Mark Simonich and Ananda Gupta, Jason Matthews. Caesar Rome vs. Gaul uses the mechanics from Hannibal Rome vs. Carthage, but with a new tribal system. Great, very, very replayable. Suffers from the same concerns with the common deck and the issues I raised with Hannibal Rome vs. Carthage. To a lesser extent, the drawing of tribes is critical here. So the Gallic tribes can spawn sort of in random locations. It's a challenge. There is a huge learning curve for Caesar, for the Roman player. They will find it fairly easy to crush these tribes and go out through our Gaul, but to actually meet the victory conditions in this game is, quite difficult. And that requires repeated plays. They really need to appreciate how aggressive you need to be as the Roman player, how deep you need to just dive into Gallic territory. And it's hard to appreciate that need on your first game or two. So Caesar Rome vs. Gaul was a runner-up, and All Bridges Burning, the 3-player coin series, was also an honourable mention for this year. Very impressed with it. The first 3-player coin game, not quite as successful as Colonial Twilight, the 2-player coin game. There were two, there's a red and the white player, and then there's a blue middle ground player, and quite different game experience for that middle player. The reds and the whites are fighting each other in this military battle, and the blue player has to kind of mediate a middle ground. It's very difficult for them to, very difficult for them to do that, to manipulate the situation and actually have an impact on what's going on. Honourable mention for All Bridges Burning, and again, I've got a playthrough of that on the channel as well. For 2021, Atlantic Chase, Jeremy White, wonderful design. Great learning experience. So Jeremy White is the master of rulebook designs for learning. He makes games a joy to learn through his sort of structured rulebooks, structured scenarios. This is an amazing sort of blind naval wargaming simulation, in the sense that you don't always know where your opposing forces are. You often don't know where your own forces are. They're somewhere basically on this trail. So your convoy has set out from here, and you need to try to intercept them at some point and hope that you find the interception point. Otherwise, adjust your course to try again. What can I say? Brilliant game system. Very innovative, very creative, very intelligent design, which takes for me out Game of the Year. But another great competitor, another great runner-up this year was Bayonets and Tomahawks. It was also published this year by GMT Games as well. And it's another really innovative design, another game on the 7 Years' War in North America, the French and Indian War, which features sort of asynchronous forces, really interesting movement mechanics, and combat mechanics, and again is well worth checking out just for its innovative game design. Moving in, we're getting up to 2022 now, and for me, Game of the Year is a game that really surpassed my expectations. I had very low expectations of Salerno 43, recently played it, finished it, set it up immediately, played it again, another 7-inch design. Look, a one-mapper game. This is pretty much most of the map that you can see there. So fairly small footprint, but it captures the essence of those 7-inch designs. In this case, Zockbonds still play a role, particularly for the Germans defending, but more critical is those road networks. So this almost feels like, it's probably closest to Ardennes 44 in terms of how you're carefully studying and scrutinizing the terrain features and trying to navigate. In this case, it's the Germans trying to find a retreat path, a slow retreat path through the mountains. So yeah, worth checking out Salerno 43 if you're a fan of that broader system. For 2023, there were 2 games. I've decided I think I liked Downfall. This is a tough one. North Africa 41 came out this year as well, and I haven't finished my gameplay of that, but I think if I had to choose between the two, between Downfall and North Africa 41, I think I'd choose Downfall. The challenge for Downfall is it doesn't play well solitaire. So for me as a solitaire gamer, it's a real challenge. You're almost managing 4 hands at once and 4 different hands, and the information presented isn't great for managing that sort of dual or quadruple hand management. So North Africa 41 is probably the better solo-friendly game, but I really like the creativity and the feel of Downfall, Conquest of the Third Reich by John Butterfield and Chad Jensen, published by GMT Games. So yeah, so North Africa 41 is a runner-up for me. Which brings me to this year, 2024, and disclosure, I have not played yet any of the games that I'm about to mention. So this is probably my potential games of the year. And I'm going to say, so unplayed, I'm most excited about Alau 1807. I've read the rules, I have done an unboxing, I am very close to being able to play it. I love the innovations in the system here. I love the map, terrain features, the colors, the orders system. Everything looks really cool. So I'm excited to play this. So this, I don't know if I can say it's a game of the year when I haven't played it, but so this is my top nomination for this year, which I'll decide later on. The Greatest Day, Utah Beach. Another GTS title, Utah Beach. I'm not really in a GTS phase at the moment, but it's hard not to give an honourable mention to this. This has been years in developing by an amazing team of designers and playtesters, and it deserves a mention. I don't know if/when I'll ever get to play The Greatest Day, Utah Beach, but it's worth, everything I've seen of it looks amazing and it's worth mentioning. And there are 2 other honourable mentions. The first is Spring Prelude, 2nd Kharkov, May 1942. It's Greg Blanchett's design. He uses a system from Vorblau, which I didn't actually mention. That should have been an honourable mention at some stage when that came out. When was Vorblau published? That was published in 2016, when last Blitzkrieg was published. So that should be an honourable mention for 2016. So it uses the same kind of system, but for 2nd Kharkov, May 1942. So yes, keen to play that. Hopefully, I think that may come out this year. And the other one, which I've only recently seen, is Winter's Victory, another Alau title. And another one, this is by New England Simulations, and another one with really, again, I'm having a discussion about how difficult it is to represent Alau, this snow-covered battlefield. But again, some really nice looking counters. It looks like a really interesting system of rules. I'm also keen to check that out if I can try and get my hands on a copy. So there are kind of 4 honourable mentions for 2024. If I have to pick one, I'm probably most excited about playing this. If this comes out, look, that's like that one. If this comes out this year, probably excited to play that. Would love to have the time to play this. and would love to get a copy of this as well. So folks, that is my list of Wargame of the Year from 1999 to 2023, 2024. Very much welcome your feedback, criticisms, suggestions. Is there anything I've missed? It's very difficult to find games by year of publication. It's very difficult to search for games by year of publication. I almost missed Fall Blau, which I absolutely love. If there's anything else, I'm looking behind me, Race for Bastogne. We did Race for Bastogne. So it's hard to get those lists of games that came out in a given year. Where Eagles Dare. What else? Yeah, look, if you think I've missed anything, please let me know. But yeah, that's again very subjective, very personal. These are my views only. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care. Bye.